Hi friends, today we're going to work on a fun project. We're going to work together to create a huge collaborative paper quilt. Every student at Meadow Lane Primary is going to design a square that will be part of a paper quilt that looks kind of like this one. Even our friends who are learning from home will be able to add a piece to our quilt. This project was inspired by the artist Liz Elliott. She makes beautiful quilts by putting together lots of different fabric squares to make one big quilt. Making a quilt is kind of like putting together the pieces of a puzzle to make one big picture. Here's one of the quilts that Liz Elliott designed. I want you to take a second and see if you can find some of the squares hiding inside of her patterns. I see a lot of triangles and different shapes. It's kind of hard to see the squares, so I'm going to point a few of them out for you. Are you finding it easier to find the squares now? I thought that last one was tricky because what I saw was a big orange triangle, but there's a square hiding inside there. Now I'm going to show you a few more of her quilts, and I want you to see if you can spot the squares that are hiding inside. Okay, I think we're almost ready to start on our own paper quilt squares, but right before you get started, I just want to let you know, even though you're creating art from home, I would love for you to give me your paper quilt square so I can make it part of our big quilt at school. You can put it in the mail, the address is on your screen, or I'm going to leave a big cardboard box right outside the office so that you can drop it off at your convenience. I'm going to put the box outside the office after school on Thursday, August 27th. And I'm going to leave it out for a little over the week. I'm going to pick it up on Monday, September 7th. So if you have a chance to stop by the office, you don't even need to go in the office. In fact, I would like for you to not go into the office, but you can just stick it right inside the box outside the door. Okay, when you're ready, we're going to start our video, and I'm going to show you how you can cut your papers that you have at home to make your paper quilt square. Okay friends, so the tools that we're going to need to make our quilt square today is a glue stick, a pair of scissors, and then you should have your papers that I sent home with your e-learning supplies. So if you don't have these supplies for some reason, you're just going to need a 6-inch square, a 6-inch triangle, it's half of a 6-inch square, and then two 3-inch squares. So if you need to pause and get that together, you can go ahead and do that. This paper, we are not going to do anything with it. This is going to be the base of our quilt square, so we want to leave it 6 inches. Our other shapes, we're going to use them to create variety in our quilt square by making them into other shapes. Now, if you want to leave your big triangle, a big triangle, you can. Or you can use it to make two smaller triangles. So in order to fold these shapes, and get two symmetrical sides. Symmetrical just means that it's the same on both sides. You can fold your big triangle. We want to make sure that those points line up. We're going to press a fold into it so that when we open it up, we have a line that we can cut on. So if you choose to make this into two triangles, you're going to cut that in half. I don't want you to make any smaller pieces than this because we really want to be able to see all the shapes that we made. So now with your smaller squares, there's a lot of different ways that you can fold these to make shapes. You're going to have two of them. If you choose not to cut one, that's okay, but I would like for everybody to use at least one of their squares to make another shape. So some different things that we can do is we can fold our square in half diagonally. It reminds me of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich because this is how I like to cut my peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, into two triangles. So if you choose to do that, you can cut that in half there. Okay, so that square becomes two triangles. We can cut one in half this way, and what shape are we going to make? We're going to end up making two rectangles if we cut along that fold. You might even decide that you want to continue with these and make some even smaller shapes. So you could fold one of those rectangles in half, and now we have a square. So if we cut those in half, we have two squares. So there's lots of different shapes that you can make. If you really want to have lots of different shapes, you might be able to fold that and make smaller triangles if you cut those in half. But I'm going to leave what I have like this. There's lots of different varieties of shapes that you can make, and we want to make sure that we're doing something different than our friends because everybody's quilt square is going to be different. So once you have the shapes that you want, you're going to take your big quilt square. Remember, we are not cutting this one because everybody's quilt square needs to be the same size. So I don't want you to use your glue stick until you are ready. We're going to play with our composition. Our composition is how we want to design our square. So you're just going to kind of play with these and see where you want them to go. Okay. You can overlap your shapes if you want to. It's totally up to you. But just experiment. Let's see what kind of different designs and shapes we can make with the paper that we have. Okay. Oh, look what shape I made. Okay. So maybe you want to put a rectangle there. Maybe we can put a square up here, or I can turn it into a diamond. Okay. I think I'm going to go ahead and cut this one into those two triangles that I made. And remember, it's okay to overlap your shapes. Okay. I don't know that I'm really happy with that. That's kind of how that looks. It looks like a face a little bit to me. So now that you have your design that you want, then you're going to start gluing. So we're going to start gluing our shapes together. Make sure your smaller shapes are on the top when you start gluing them together. I'm just going to set that aside. Set that aside. Now I want to get these big yellow triangles on there before I can glue the other things on top. When I'm gluing a shape with my glue stick, I like to trace the outside of the shape to make sure that my edges get stuck down really well. If you put a little bit of glue just in the middle, then it seems like the corners and the edges kind of flop up a little bit and they don't stick really well. So again, I'm just tracing around my triangle with my glue stick. And we want to make sure when we glue that none of our shapes go outside of the edge of that 6-inch square. Almost done. Okay. If you stayed inside your 6-inch space when you turn it over, you shouldn't really see anything sticking out. Looks like I overlapped my edge just a tiny bit there, but that's okay. So everybody's quilt square should look different. That's what's interesting about this quilt is that everybody's is going to be very unique. We're going to put a lot of variety into this quilt. So some of the other quilt squares that I made, they all look completely different depending on how much you cut your shapes down to smaller shapes or where you arrange them. So I really want you guys to experiment and come up with your own unique design before you start gluing. Okay friends, if you're still working on cutting those squares into some other shapes, here are some reminders on the different ways that we can fold and cut those papers to change their shape and size. So just remember, we're not cutting the big square, that is our base. Our big triangle, you can either leave it a big triangle or you can cut it in half to make two smaller triangles. When we cut our squares, that's when we can start really having some fun and making lots of different shapes. You could cut it in half diagonally to make two triangles. You can cut it in half vertically to create two rectangles. And you can even fold it again, and then we can turn those rectangles into squares. There's a lot of different ways that you can fold and cut those shapes to make different ones. So I really hope that you have fun designing your quilt square and that you share it with me at school. I can't wait to see what you made. I hope you had fun.